This is Jasmine from Girl Guide Singapore. So I will be sharing. Can you all see my screen? Yeah? Okay, great. So I will be sharing about how we recently had our annual general meeting online, and and how did we actually go about doing the governance component online as well. Okay, so the first introduction that I have for you is that Girl Guide Singapore successfully managed to actually conduct our first virtual annual general meeting on the 16th of May 2020, and with over 380 adult leaders together with us. Okay, so before I go on, I would also like to thank my two colleagues who are here with us today from Girl Guide Singapore, because they were very important in the entire AGM process, Man Ting and Cindy, who are here. Yep. So according to our Girl Guide Singapore Constitution, we had to make sure that we conduct our AGM in May, partly because we had changes to be made to the Constitution, and we required voting from the members actually. So what is happening in most countries, we have what we call the circuit breaker, which is equivalent to the lockdown in many countries that was happening during the last 2 months. So everyone had to stay at home and we had to work from home, and you could only leave home for essential services. So you can imagine our shock as a MO of, oh no, now we have to continue to do our AGM, but how are we going to do it? So some of the considerations that we had before we could actually host the AGM was to look at who was our target audience, the voting platform that we wanted to use, and also the virtual platform that we are using. So these are some of the considerations that I would like to invite all MOs to consider before you conduct your own AGM in your own country. Okay. So for us, our target audience as Girl Guide Singapore is actually a school-based MO. Our target audience, most of our adult leaders are actually school teachers. So that takes up about 80 to 90% of them are actually school leaders. And 20% of our adult leaders are maybe volunteers, with about 5% or less being in the Trefoil Guild, which is considered the alumni. And they tend to be at least about 60 years and above. So with that, we had to keep that in mind to make sure that the AGM is also accessible to this group of people as well. So when choosing the platform, we decided to toggle and decide between Google Meet and Zoom. And we decided on Zoom because it was something that most of our adult leaders are already familiar with. And last but not least, the trickiest part about the entire AGM was actually the voting component actually. So what we did was that instead of getting our members to vote during the AGM itself, as we previously did, we actually sent them an email about 3 weeks in advance, and they had two options. They could choose to download a PDF and then make a call back to our HQ staff and let them know what are their choices for voting, or they could actually fill up the Google form for those who are more competent in using technology. So the voting information was actually sent out about 3 weeks in advance. All our members, adult members, could choose to vote whether were they for, against, or abstaining the vote. And the deadline for submission was actually 2 days before our AGM. Votes that came in after the deadline were actually considered as abstain. And the voting results had to reflect the people who were present during the AGM itself, and also their votes for each of the 3 changes that we were proposing. Okay, so this is a sample of what we were supposed to show during the AGM itself. Okay, so we had it in a pie chart format where most of the people voted green in favor for, and a small percentage was against, and then a small percentage was abstaining their vote. Okay, so you can see the percentage in blue, that was supposed to reflect the actual number as reflected during the AGM process itself. So other preparations that we had to do was to make sure that we could help those members who could not actually, had no prior experience with Zoom to be familiar with Zoom. So the staff also had to prepare Zoom instructions to be sent out to all members, okay, and also calling and reminding all the members to vote. So it was quite a tedious process in itself. And we had to train our volunteers to help us with the actual attendance taking before the start of the AGM, because we had to make sure that we reach a number of people before we can start our AGM. Okay. We also had to have a lot of rehearsals with our speakers and the staff team to make sure that the flow of the AGM is smooth, and toggling and transitions between screens to screens, showing different screens and all this also takes some time to get used to as well. And stable internet connections, because some of us are working from home and our internet connections wasn't very strong. Okay, and also we had to come up with a procedure for asking questions and moderating all these questions as well. So trying to admit 300 over people to a Zoom call and making sure that no one else has decided to come and just join our AGM, someone who is not our member, was quite a challenge itself. We actually had to stagger the timing. So our AGM actually started at 9 a.m. So what we did was we split our adult leaders into what we call divisions, which in Singapore is based by North, South, East, and West. So according to these divisions, they were all given a time slot in which they should enter the Zoom call. Okay. Once they enter the Zoom call, they will all be in the waiting list, and they are required to put their names in a very specific manner. For example, that's GGS, Jasmine. So we will check it against our attendance with the support team on the Google Sheet. We will actually need to mark yes, Y for yes, and N for no for the attendance. Okay, this is because we actually need to make sure that the attendance of these people are reflected, and the vote that they have submitted is also reflected in order for us to share with the rest of the adult leaders during the AGM itself. Okay, so my colleague has designed the formulas to be put into the Google Sheet to actually help us to calculate the percentage of the overall votes. So this was the part that was quite tricky, and during the AGM itself, we did have a few errors that were quite nerve-wracking, okay? So one of which was halfway through, one of my colleagues who's here, she actually called me and said that, oh no, the formula is not working. I cannot calculate the percentage. So you can imagine that everyone was panicking quite a little bit, because we were supposed to be showing the figures to over 300 members pretty soon. So, but I think she managed to work something out. And midway through the Zoom call as well, I think it was about an hour into the Zoom call, we were all kicked out of the Zoom call. Like every 300 over people were just suddenly kicked out of the Zoom call, and our host was panicking because she had to let everyone in except everyone into the Zoom call. And we were concerned about security because we had our president of our organization with us, and we were concerned about security issues as well, that people who are not supposed to be there were there. So the support team had to check through the 300 over names to make sure that everyone is familiar to us, and we did not let some random stranger into our Zoom call as well. So the AGM took 1 hour and 40 minutes, which I think was a bit long, before we actually said goodbye and welcomed the new council and executive council members to join us for the rest of the year. Okay, so some of the lessons that we learned during this period is, despite all the hours that we actually put in, things will actually still go wrong. Okay, so some of the things that we did not predict for or that went wrong, well, I'll share it here so that other MOs, you can take this as some lessons for you to prepare. So there was a lot of time that was spent on the Q&A questions, and that was a lot of people were getting very disengaged by then. And for a meeting of 1 hour and 40 minutes where people were not really talking, it was a very it's like a webinar where you are just listening. It's something that will disengage people quite quickly. So people were complaining at the site about, having to sit too long and all this kind of things. And midway through our presentation, the technology was lagging. So the person who was clicking the slides was not able to react as quickly because her technology was lagging. And the person speaking was actually on the other end waiting for the slide to be clicked. Okay. So despite all this, I think it was a very good experience for the organization. And if you ask me if Girl Guides Singapore will want to do this again, technically I'll tell you that we will still prefer to do a face-to-face AGM. Okay, so whatever goes wrong, all we need to remember is that we managed to keep calm and to continue to keep on guiding. Yeah. Thank you very much.